In 3, 2, 1. What's going on, folks? Welcome to 34 Questions. I'm your host, 34. And tonight I have a returning guest. Mr. Devin Ream is back in the building for the third time. How are you doing tonight, bro?
Doing all right. How about yourself, 34?
I'm doing okay, man. Oh, man. Yeah. I'm trying to... I just got off work, so you're catching me right when I'm trying to set things up. I try to give myself 10 minutes is my my sweet spot where I can get everything loaded and everything, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer.
There's no feeling like you're slightly rushed, and your computer knows it. It's like you click on something and you're like, why is that not going as fast as it usually does? Why is it doing this? And then you're like, oh yeah, I'll just load this thing up, and it's not doing it. And you're like, oh, I'm in a hurry. Someone's watching, there's a time crunch. There's something that this computer is like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do this immediately. I have to wait a little bit,
Is that Murphy's Law? Is that the,
I think it's, at least. Yeah. If it's, what was it? If things can go wrong, they will. That's kind of the way I've looked at things. But yeah, no, it's one of those things I mean, lately with all the stuff that's been going down, I mean, it working at all is wow, that's great.
No doubt. Yeah,
man.
We just keep our fingers crossed and hope everything goes smoothly. But now I hear you. I don't know how's the weather up there for you? I know it's a very basic question, but
it's been crazy. Around Christmas, the week of that weekend of Christmas, I'm in the Salem, Oregon area, and it was an ice skating rink. It was insane. We had 2 to 3 inches of just straight ice. Which I haven't seen that since my Midwest days when I was in Missouri, and I was just like, man, this is crazy. And we had to go down to see my wife's family, and it was kind of odd because they have a thing in Oregon. It's called Trip Check. I think in California they've got something similar, and you can see cameras on I-5 and all the highways and in the cities and different stuff. And we're looking in Portland and Salem and all these areas, and it's it's the ice apocalypse, man. It's ice skating rink. Nobody's doing anything. You see cars spinning. It's oh no. And then literally the highway, I-5, clear, just completely clear. And so it was one of those things. I told my wife, I was like, I think if we get out of the city and we get to an exit, I think we're fine after that, And so you take it super slow, and it was kind of going, and then we get to the highway, and it was pretty dang clear. I will say you got to dodge people who put chains on and they keep coming off, or random car parts that were out there. That was the only thing you had to kind of watch out and dodge for. Go a little bit slower, But otherwise, since that weekend, it's really just been kind of cloudy, rainy. If you got that, what is it, sad seasonal affective disorder or what have you, you're probably I am sad. Yeah. Way to go, clouds. Why'd you show up every day this week? What's going on? Yeah.
Do you believe in the SAD?
I think some people it affects them more than others. I think it depends on where you grew up and if it's in a stark contrast to what you're in currently. Right? I can't imagine growing up in Puerto Rico or Hawaii, somewhere tropical where it's not always sunny, but the sun is kind of your ticket to everything, right? You want to surf, it better be sunny, because if it's cloudy, hazy, whatever, it's just, it's kind of weird. And so I can only imagine what that's like. For me personally, growing up in the Midwest, we had all 4 seasons, right? So you got the leaves and the brown and the yellows and whatever in fall. Had a winter that usually was not great. Summers were super hot and humid. And so I think really what gets you is if it's prolonged, right? One cloudy day ain't going to bring you down, but 3 weeks, every day it's cloudy.
Yeah.
Like you look over to the like window and you're like, I don't see a sunrise. Like what happened? Like what is going on? And then it's like by the time you do get to see it, it's, you know, you're like, I'm already working. What was the point? Like I can't even see the sunrise now. And then the sun goes down quicker. So it's like 4 or 4:30 and the sun's down. Like what is going on?
For sure.
And so, yeah, I think that affects, you know, some folks pretty heavily. I think for me, it's the prolonged part of it. If it's too many days in a row, I know mentally, I may not think it's affecting me, but I think it does.
No, I hear you, man. It's hard for me to tell. I grew up in the area I'm at right now. It's always been kind of cloudy, and that's how it's always just been. But I will say I never really did like winters, and for various reasons. I do hate the shorter days, and it's always dark out by the time I'm headed home. So I really can't tell. I remember when I moved to SoCal for college, my mood definitely changed a little bit more, especially in the fall. The October, November, December months for sure. But it's always a rough patch for me, man. I don't know what it is. A little bit could be like expectations of the holidays, because you're supposed to have a good time in the holidays, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Well, they're like, for me mentally, it's like whether I was a kid or even now, there's like this mentality of like, this is when I'm gonna get a bunch of time off. So that should be great. And then, like you said, the time goes by way too quick. You had certain expectations or things that you wanted to get done, and you either got it halfway done or you didn't get it all the way done. And so you're like, what was I doing? I had like 2 weeks, I thought. Like, what happened? You know? And yeah, it gets kind of rough. And then when you don't feel like you took advantage of the full time, you're kind of like, man, like
that's life
now,
too, right?
No, I know. Yeah. It's like, it's hard because I know just coming off of just the Christmas weekend, I think I only took like 1 day, and then we had an extra day for the holiday. And I thought, oh yeah, 2 extra days off. Like that's kind of what I need right now. Like, I think this is going to be a good thing. And then I do, you know, ice apocalypse happens, and then you travel. You go through the holiday, which although is fun and good and, you know, get to visit family and everything's all great, there's still a lot of driving. There's still a lot of like, you don't know what you're going to do next. I'm not at my usual home. Now I'm worried about my cats. Like, what's going on? And then, you know, you finally make it back and you're like, I gotta work tomorrow. Like, this sucks. Like, how did this happen? And so it's more of like, you're like, man, I got to go back to work. It's not that you didn't want to go, but yeah.
The switch is so fast. It's like,
it is.
Tomorrow, you've been enjoying your time. Tomorrow,
exactly. Tomorrow, nope. Will not happen. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I'm trying to remember which side of my family it is, but like, basically I had one of my grandmas, they had this thing where before it was the Sunday, and she always called it her Sunday headache. And she said she always got a headache on Sunday because she was thinking about work the next day. And it would just go and go. And so at that time, I should have been like, yeah, watch out for mental illness. But at the second thing, I was kind of like, I mean, I go to school. It's not that bad. Now that I have a job, I'm like, yeah, I could see you get a headache pretty quick. Like, I think that could happen. So, yeah, but no, it's like, it's one of those things, man. The Sunday scaries. I think that's what I've heard before as well.
Sunday scaries. Yeah. I call them the Sunday blues sometimes, you know. Just, I don't know about you, but growing up during any vacation, summer break, winter break, maybe not so much spring break because it's not as long, but that day before the first day of school or returning from a vacation, super anxious, man. I would be like, you know, just awake. And I was talking to one of my students today about this too, because he told me he had done that last night before today was the first day back. And I was like, oh yeah, man, I used to get anxious. And he's like, no, I don't get anxious. I'm excited to be back. I'm like, okay, that's different. But for me, man, I had this thing of like, I forgot everything I learned, and I'm not gonna be back to where I was. And the way I calm myself down is pretty much telling myself like everyone's in the same boat. That's why they teach you during class, so you can do the work afterwards.
Yeah.
That would calm me down.
Yeah. And that's the thing for me. It was like beginning of the school year, that night, like you said, at the time, I didn't know it was anxiety. I think when I was a kid, I was completely just bonkers and I thought, oh, I'm just in my head. Like, what is going on? But I think it was 50% anxious. And that 50%, like you said, it was about school. It was like, I don't want to be an idiot. I really want to like nail down everything that I've got. And then there was another 50% that I was like the kid. I was like, oh, I'm going to see my friends. I'm going to like be able to figure out what classes I got with who. And I'm going to be able to like see new teachers. Like maybe I'll have a couple cool ones. And I was hoping for that. If you got bad ones, you basically tried to forget it as fast as you could. You're like, oh no, like I'm not going to remember this at all. And then it was like January, right? So you're like kind of midway through the school year. That one was always just anxiety because I thought, okay, I'm going to come back and they're going to do the little like introductions of stuff. But overall, like it's going to be like 3 days where they're going to take it easy on you. And then they're just going to just make a gauntlet of stuff that you have no idea. And so I always felt like I was doing double the like catch up work. Like if I was a runner, I'd be running twice as fast as what I should be, because basically these teachers are like, well, this is my job and I get to see you for 1 year. And so I'm going to do whatever I want. And they just like rattle off all this information that of course they know. And I'm just sitting there as a kid, like, dude, it's been 2 days. Like 3 days ago, I was shoveling back Reese's Christmas trees and playing, you know, Jet Moto 2 or like Twisted Metal, you know, Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And now you're slamming me with algebra? Like, what is this? Like, this should not be happening, you know? Yeah. So it was a mix. It was a mixed bag, you know?
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
I forgot to say Happy New Year's to you, dog.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Yeah, 2023. Yeah.
2023. How's it for you? Like, what are you coming into the new year with a new mindset? Like, tell me about it. You get this?
Yeah. Like, I think the last like 5 or 6 years, I always was like, new year, new me, man. Let's do it. Like, yeah. All right. And then by probably March or April, I'm like, man, that January guy, he was so optimistic. And now, you know, like he's in March and April and he's struggling. Like he's barely getting by. And so this year, I think this is the first year in like 5 or 6 years where I'm kind of like, I'm trying to tame my expectations, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah. In April, I'm going to Europe and I'm going to London, Paris, then Venice, then, you know, Florence and Rome. Right. So it's just like a whole trek. And as much as I'm excited to go do that stuff, have all the food, travel, see new people, use my Italian, like do all that stuff, there's also the like part of me that's like, what if something terrible happens? And then the back part of my mind is like, what is that terrible thing? Can you name it? Do you know what that is? And it's like, no, I'm just trying to scare myself. I think I don't know what that is. And so it goes back to excitement, right? And it kind of just gauges back and forth. And so, yeah, I'm trying to tame all expectations, because I notice if you get too high or you think too negatively, it's subverted either way. Like if it's an amazing trip, you had all these worries for no reason. And if it's an awful trip, you're going to be disappointed because you thought it was going to be great and it wasn't. So it's just like, I'm trying to keep it at that mid-level and just be like, hey, if it's icing, it's icing. If it's, you know, raisins in the oatmeal cookie, then it's freaking raisins. You're going to deal with it. All right. You're still going to be like, oh, well, got a cookie at least. Right. Like,
no, for something. Sure. I think whenever my mind starts racing about those things, I try to tell myself, just live in the moment, like be in the moment, whether good or bad. 'Cause, you know, it's all going to end up being how you perceive things and how you react to certain situations. So no matter how much you can, I think I read this quote, it's like, no amount of thinking is going to change, you know, whatever it is you're thinking about, right? And the hard truth sometimes, it's like, no, I can figure this out. I can, you know, identify every angle and all this stuff. But really, you know, it might not even turn out the way you thought it would be. And more often than not, that's the case for me. I'm always
See, that's the thing. I think for me, I honestly point it back to sports. I really do. Basketball, baseball, football. Before a play happens, you're trying to predict what you will do if the guy goes to the left, or if, you know, something happens to the right, or if I'm out in right field and this gets hit shallow and there's a guy at third, am I really going to try to gun him down at home, or am I looking for, you know, the guy trying to run for a double, pump fake, and then throw it to second, get the last out? Like you're running all these scenarios in your head of like what can happen. And I know it's very timely. Like we just had that whole thing with the NFL going on, and I don't think anybody could have predicted what happened, right? Like nobody could have set up that scenario and been like, yeah, no, somebody's just going to fall over and the game's going to be suspended. It's like, what? Like nobody can prepare you for that. And it's like this weird reality where it's kind of like, I think that's why a lot of these big name athletes, it's so like jarring. It's so shocking, is because it's like 1 minute you're basically on top of the world. You're basically like, I'm going to play this game. I'm doing what I love to do. Here we go. And then the next minute it's just like, I don't even know what to do now. Like that was the thing that just completely derailed everything. And it's one of those things, like you were saying, living in the moment is being maybe like grateful for more things that are around you, or that we have like modern medicine that does a lot of crazy things. But then there's like the brain side that's like, well, you know, what if that was me? Or like, what if that was a friend of mine? Or what if that was my teammate? Or what if, you know, and you play the what ifs over and over and over again. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to stay present.
And I was shook. I was,
and
it's one of those things for me. Like, I don't know if I'm just becoming more emotional as I get older, dude, but like,
oh, definitely.
Things hit my heartstrings, you know, a little bit more as I feel like I get older. And that was one of those things. You know, I didn't actually see the play. I don't know if you were watching the game, but I just heard about it and I looked it up, and then like, just I think for me is when I see other people react, and like I can just feel that emotion from like somebody with a blank stare on their face, or so much concern. For some reason, that concern comes up in me. I'm like, oh shit, like this is super serious. And I just wanted to say the newest show that I seen or finished recently, and I don't know if you've seen it, but I feel like it's right up your alleyway. The Bear on Hulu. Maybe. You checked it out?
Yes.
You finished?
Love The Bear. Yeah.
Oh my God, dude.
Love it. Yeah. And that is a like anxiety roller coaster. I mean, that thing just like from start to finish, it does paint that area of life really, really well. And it also tells that story of being the person that's overwhelmed, right? Like him trying to take over that after his brother has, you know, basically non-alived himself, and you're trying to pick up the pieces. Like you're already emotional about that, but you don't want this thing to fail. And I just remember, I always will remember the first episode, the first scene where it's the dream sequence and he's walking across the bridge and there's just this bear in a cage and then the cage door comes down, and it's like one of those things, you know, they're trying to say a metaphor or they're trying to be symbolic about what's going on. But like the thing that I took away from that, especially after finishing it, was everybody has that bear. That thing that just scares you to death, Yet everybody else will tell you, oh, it's like a teddy bear. It's cuddly. It's this, don't worry about. Yeah, sure. It's like half a ton and it can crush you, but don't let it crush you. You'll do a great thing and do a great job. But it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, to each person, somebody's got that bear that just is intimidating. It is overwhelming. And you're just like, I don't know how I'm going to get around this. Like,
And correct me if I'm wrong. The bear was in a cage, right? In that opening scene,
right?
And it was unleashed, or like something opened it, and then it was coming out, right? So it was always there. And I guess maybe for Carmi, the main character, he was like, it was contained until it got to that point of like, how are you gonna deal with it as it comes out? But yeah, no, it was a great series, man. I started it like the first, second, and third episode, and then I like let it sit in the back of my head for months. Then I came back to it during this Christmas break. Oh, that last episode too.
Yeah.
The whole anytime there's a therapy scene in a movie or a TV show, it hits, dude. So the way he was just explaining the whole season pretty much up to that point. Right. And like, I don't know, I feel like in my life, I know a few Carmies, I know a few Richies, I know a few Mikeys, right? Like, I just thought about them too. I'm like, damn, I wonder if they've seen this, and like, who do they relate to most? And if it is any one of those characters, it's like, yo, like, dude, don't worry, I'm with you. Like, or when Richie's like, you're all I got, and spoiler alert, but I was like, oh, dude, that's so heavy. It is. And it's like you were saying, that's one of those things where I think, whether you fall on the side of like just being a normal person and you're like, dude, everybody's got emotions, everybody has a life that they're trying to get through and do their best, that type of moment where it's like, you're all I got. Like, that's it. There's like this deep like pain, because it's just like, exactly what he's pointing towards, but at the same time, it is this connection of like, I can't just stop. I can't just do that. Like, this is what I've got, and this is what you have to go through. And it's one of those things, like, I think growing up, your parents or somebody would say it's not always so black and white. And you were just sitting there in your head like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's pretty black and white. Like, I think I understand that. And it was probably that way in your head. And then you become an adult. And I mean, certain situations like that, I know I've ran into it here and there, the bittersweet, right? Mm-hmm. And you kind of get to those moments. And every time, all I can think is, this is that gray. This is that thing. Right? Like, you want to be able to organize it perfectly into, black or white. I'm going to, oh, well, if you go to white, you're going to triumph over this, and it's this great thing. But then there's the black part where it's like, this should knock you down, and this should be pretty bad and humbling and not great. And you're going to learn from it, but it does take time. Like, it's not going to be something that's that easy. And instead, it's in that gray area, and you don't know where to put it. It's just there, right? For sure. I have those conversations with the kids I work with all the time. They're in high school. Mm-hmm. So their black and white is right and wrong. Well, this is right and this is wrong. And man, like, I always tell them, there's always going to be, as you get older, there's going to be that gray area. Like, why is it black? I mean, why is it right or why is it wrong kind of thing? And you got to think about those things and how, like, what choice you're going to make in those situations. Because, it's not always that way. And I don't get into those arguments with them or like those debates, because I know just experience, or like, they say our brain isn't done developing at that time, or they just haven't been in those situations where they can say, no, actually, there is more to the story than just what's right. Like, I know some people's like, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. I don't know how you feel about that statement, but it's
to me, like, right, it's one of those things, like, depends on your perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's how it always is. And it's sad, because basically when you say that, you're automatically instigating this thing of like, you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And some people, they're not going to butt against that. They're like, no, I can't imagine what it's like to be in that person's shoes. But let's be realistic here. I'm in my shoes, and this is what my perspective tells me. And so it's like, yeah, okay, like whatever, like here's what you gotta look through, and this is all the things. And so like you were saying, when somebody says like right is right, wrong is wrong, I'm kind of like, yeah, sure. Like if it's, if it's like the difference between like, oh, there's a kid being loud in a movie theater, do you throw your popcorn at him or do you just tell him to quiet down? Well, we know which one is the right decision. You tell the kid to quiet down. But then there's other things where it's like, yeah, you're going to leave this job that has, so much importance, and you do all these things and it's community driven, but the money sucks. And then you've got this other job that like money's amazing, you're gonna live great, but yeah, the importance of it probably not that high. You're not gonna get as much fulfillment out of it, but guess what, those around you, you're going to be able to shower them with financial gifts and all these things. And so it's like, which one is the wrong guy there? Which one is the right guy there?
And that's up to the person, right?
I know it is.
They value
it totally is. Yeah. What they value. And it is hard. It is very hard.
Yeah. I got you. I got one more media thing. I don't know if you've seen the Whale. The trailer for The Whale?
I've seen all the trailers. Yeah. I haven't watched the movie.
I almost feel like the most recent trailer was so good to me. I almost think the film is going to disappoint me because of how good the trailer was.
Right. Yeah.
I think I've seen all I needed to see in the trailer. But yeah, man, that line of like, I just want my life to mean something. Like I want to know that I did something right with my life. I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're all striving for, deep down inside, at least, I hope. But yeah.
Yeah. The thing that blew my mind media wise when it comes to that kind of stuff, there's a podcast called Revisionist History with Malcolm Gladwell, and everybody's got opinions on Gladwell, like that's fine. But he did an episode about basically, how people are consistently like misjudging other people, right? Like you've got this person that graduated from this high university, understands 3 languages, very personable, very vocal, very face forward. Everybody knows who this person is. They're ambitious. They're all these things, yet that gal was a CIA agent. And not only was she a CIA agent, but she was kind of like a double agent, and she was actually working for Cuba to basically be a spy. And it was kind of this thing where you have to ask the question, like, how does somebody that is that ambitious, vocal, all those things not get caught sooner? Like, how does that happen? And how did she trick all these people into thinking that it's like, oh, she's just like us, she's going to go to the CIA, everything's great. But at the same time, everybody looks down on that because it's like, oh, you're betraying this country. But on her end, it's like she has that perspective of Cuba, right? And growing up in harsh conditions, growing up with your own style of whether you consider it propaganda or ideals, either way, there's that view. And it can change when you go somewhere else. But once you go somewhere else, you've already started and you feel like you're already halfway down the runway. You're just waiting for the plane to take off, right? And for her, it was like, yeah, the plane's going to be grounded and I get caught, or it's going to fly. And I might be able to stay in America. I might be able to do different things, but it's kind of crazy to think when somebody looks at their life perspective, kind of like with The Whale, you realize that everybody, literally everyone, has this thing that they find to be kind of their lighthouse, right? Like that's going to be that thing that I want to strive towards and do great things with, even if it's like unobtainable. right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the thing that I want to go do. And so people are going to strive toward that, even if they, they crash their boat in the rocks and it just sinks. They don't care. They're like, I was just trying to go towards that lighthouse. That's the only thing I cared about. So it's like, yeah.
I'm a deep in a little bit, dig a little bit deeper on that one for you. Yeah. So as far as, we all have our lighthouses that we're trying to go towards.
Yeah.
How does that, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, how does that affect my relationships with my friends, family, my significant others? Just because the lighthouse might be different for all of us. That's, I think, a lot of people have been challenging me as far as, oh, what are you going to do with the podcast? What's the next steps? How are you going to make it grow and all this stuff? And they're all pointing to, like, you got to get a team. You got to find people that work for you or work with you to create this thing. And I'll tell them, I ain't got money like that. I can't pay people.
Right.
So I'm hoping people just come to me and be like, yo, I really believe in what you're doing. Let me be a part of it. Your lighthouse is the same as my lighthouse. So can we do this together? I think that's a very difficult thing, man. It
is. It's hard. Very hard. Because basically you both have to have that same dream, that same vision. And there's gonna be differences here and there. And it is difficult. I will say, in terms of like relationships and how people strive towards things, I know in my head, I used to think all the time, especially for my wife, I used to think, man, I want my wife to make a ton of money. I want to be a house husband who just is along for the ride. I can cook her amazing meals. I'll take care of pets. I'll do all the kids stuff because I'm going to enjoy that kind of stuff. Like, why not? That sounds amazing. But at the same time, there's that lighthouse in your head that's kind of like, I really wanted to do food podcasting and talk about those things. I'm not going to be able to do that if I'm taking care of kids, if I'm making the dinners all the time, if I'm doing all these things on top of, basically upholding somebody else so they can make all the money. Because that is a job. I mean, that's a job, period. So stay-at-home moms, I feel like everybody tries to calculate like how much they do, right? When in reality, it's like we all do pretty much as much as we can. I mean, if we could lift a freaking car, we would. But obviously, you can just sit at the bumper and be just like try, and that's it. And I think that's pretty much everybody. I have never run into somebody that has said with like a very serious face, I'm just a lazy piece of crap. Yeah, I'm, like when it comes to life, I just want to be bedridden and I just want to watch stuff. And I don't want to make money for anybody, not even myself. I don't want to do that. I also definitely don't want to improve the lives of others. That is not something I'm for. And it's like, you're never going to hear people say that. And it's just, I think it's that internal thing of some people will jokingly say like, oh, I'm so lazy. I need to do this or that. And it's like, you're not lazy. You're overcrowded with so many obligations. People have a lot of obligations, right? Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm just lazy, to be honest with you, man.
Sometimes, yeah. And you like, think about it. What is it? Lions it's like 75% of their time is laying down in the shade.
What are they thinking
less
about?
Less than 10%. Yeah, less than 10% is hunting. The other like 10% is mating, and then another like 5 or 6% is like playing with cubs or like trying to figure out where the next water hole is. And so it's like, oh, the lion, they have to conserve their energy. And you're like hearing this stuff, and it's like, people don't look at stuff like that. We don't sit there and we go, oh man, I just worked a 10-hour shift, gonna work a 10 tomorrow. I think Friday, I'm gonna turn off all the lights in my apartment and just relax. Like, that doesn't happen. We don't have that. know?
No, that's a trip, because in my mind I'm thinking about it. If it's 75% for a lion, that means that's 18 hours of our day pretty much, right? Like,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm just
laying around.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
That's
got
normal?
flies coming around. You don't even care. You're conserving energy. That's like the main thing you got to do. You just lay there. And the, what is it? The lioness, right? They're the more active ones. They're the ones that go out and hunt the most. They're the ones who make most of the noises. They hunt at night. They hunt in packs of other lions, which is like this crazy thing. And yet, yeah, when we think of lion, we think of like MGM, right? We think of like the big mane, lion that's making this loud noise, when in reality, it's like, man, if you had to pick a lazy animal, 75% of your time you're laying in the shade or just laying down. I mean, that's as close as I think you can get. But I don't think anybody, if they walked up to a lion, would be like, you guys are so lazy. I think that you're just, come on. Like, no, they would just go after you. And, it's like they're just doing what they're doing. Like, they know that life, right? Sure. And so sometimes it's hard, like you were saying, meshing two people's lives into what you're already doing or striving for. It can be rough waters. It's tough.
Yeah. I got you. I know we just been freestyling. But yeah. I think you came on because you wanted to tackle on some more wheel questions.
Totally.
So let me throw that up. I'll show you some of the new effects we got. We're turning to the Wheel of Fate.
Yeah.
We got it right there below. Here we go, man.
Oh man, it goes fast at first.
Number. Ooh, on my screen, it's right there at the line, but it's
it's right at the line.
26 on my side.
Yeah. Let's do it.
26 is, how would you have raised yourself? If you're a parent for yourself, how would you have done it?
I've been learning a lot lately of where basically my parents, I'm saying this as nicely as I can because they were doing their best.
For sure.
But they did a lot of things incorrectly for a person like me. I was talking to my wife the other day about it, how when I think of academics, sports, which when you're a kid, that's like the two main things you're doing all the time. I was getting yelled at constantly. And when I was growing up, I thought in my head, like, oh, me getting yelled at, the coach cares, or the teacher, or my dad who didn't like the grades I was getting. Like, that was a form of caring, and it was them trying to make you focus, right? Like, you need to redirect. This is what you need to do. And now I'm at this point where I'm like, no, that like a majority of like my anxiety or negative self-talk or any of those things, it stems from that stuff. And it doesn't mean that they purposely thought it would do those things.
For sure.
But it's more of like, that is kind of what they were told. And so if I had to raise myself, I think the thing that I would try to do as often as I could is just, be the super soft-spoken, really nice abuela, right? Like, be that person that is always kind, that always declares, your love for other people, especially family members, and always checking in on them. And if they make a mistake, you just kind of like roll your eyes and go, yeah, that's life. Things happen, and you really you got to change these things. And I think I would have had more of that in my life, because it was kind of the other way around where it was like super loud. You need to redirect, refocus. And I think all that did was basically kind of throw blinders on, in a way of like, you need to be like tunnel vision on this stuff. And it was one of those things you kind of come out of that haze when you're in your high school years, because you're like, oh, what do I want to do? What are the things that I find interesting? This one kid who I meet in math class, for whatever reason, he enjoys, Robert Marley and his music that plays all the time. Like, maybe I should listen to good old Bob and figure out, what I get out of it. And so you start kind of doing those things. And when I was doing those things, I think at first there was like this thing of like, you got to be hardcore at it. You got to like go full bore into whatever you like and just run with it. When in reality, it's like, yeah, you're kind of setting up the statues you're going to knock down later, right? Like if you say, I absolutely love this, and then 5-6 years down the road, you're kind of like, yeah, that was kind of dumb. Like, I don't know why anybody was doing that. And you're like, oh yeah, I did. Like, I remember doing that. And so, yeah, just being like, you can enjoy things just to enjoy things. You can do that, right? Like, that's a thing you can do. And it's not that bad. And it will be fine. And yeah, just be kind to yourself. Like, life is very serious at times. But for the most part, it's very much you're just trying to get through, and it's lighthearted. And people do understand each other a lot more than we give them credit. But at the same time, yeah, there's some harsh stuff out there, right?
You know what? As far as understanding people, right? Some of my favorite moments, I think, in my life has been when I met someone when we don't speak the same language. We just we have that realization of like, this guy doesn't understand me. And then we just laugh it off like, oh man, what a predicament. Like,
yeah.
No, for sure. Man.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I wanted to ask you, what was one of those statues for you that you knocked down? Maybe that you had as a high schooler, and then
definitely probably like the old style. And I say old style, and some people are going to be like, that's not that old, but like the 80s, 90s rock scene, somewhat of the alternative rock, grunge in the 90s. I was a huge Kurt Cobain fan, massive. Loved him, right? Loved the music, loved the lyricism, loved the, all of it, the architecture of what they had. And I still do. But I think that back when I was in high school, and I've got the poster of Cobain and I got all the music going on, it was one of those things where I think at the time you kind of idolize this person and are like, yeah, they totally like changed music. And yeah, they kind of did that bad thing at the end, but it's like they did all this stuff. And it's like, no, you do have to you have to deal with that bad stuff. And like, people are very complicated, and people do and say a lot of things that they either regret or they don't wholeheartedly believe in. And for Kurt Cobain, he only lived to 27. I can imagine all sorts of things this last year that I either did or said that I didn't like that I did or said. Right. So I can't imagine being that young, singing the music that he did and seeing how things played out, that essentially you can grab his entire catalog of life and go, yeah, great guy. Like, no, it's like, and that was one of those statues that like you basically knocked down a little bit, because just my whole mindset had changed around kind of how Cobain was a bleeding heart, but at the same time, he did so many things that didn't help the bleeding, right? Like, it was one of those things like, dude, you really think life is harsh and bad and whatever? Yeah, it's going to be really harsh and bad when you're dropping heroin all the time. Like, you're not helping yourself. You're not doing any of these things. Like, you've got a girlfriend or a wife that also tours all the time, so you're by yourself, and you don't like being by yourself. That it's like there were all these things that he didn't exactly set himself up, I think, with the things that he truly wanted or liked, I think he kind of was along for the ride. And then the second he realized that the car had stopped, he was like, I hate where I'm at. And because of all those other factors, yeah, it turned into this thing that was like, yeah, you're not doing yourself any favors with what's going on. And
he was 27, right? He was
right.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I look back at 27 now, and it's just kind of like, I know it's not that much younger, but I know that I probably between 29 to 31, those like kind of period of 3 years.
Yeah.
Nothing awful happened, but I matured so much more in those years. And I don't know why. It's probably different for everybody, right? Like 27 to 29 or 32 to 35. Like everybody's got a different range, but there's a certain range of years that just your eyes and kind of, I would say, tenderness, right? Like you were saying, I'm getting older, so I'm becoming a softie. And you're kind of like, I understand these emotions and these things that are going on, that the maturity of it all just ramps up so much more. And you enjoy it, and you're glad that you see those things. But yeah, your younger self is like, man, what a punk. Like, he's not doing anything. Like, he's worried about this and that. And you're like, oh man, you just wait till you get older. Like, oh man. Yeah, it's rough.
I think one of my favorite things about that 29, 30 to 31 age range, that I was realizing what I was about, what I felt like was for me, versus like I think I was done trying to try everything and then be like, okay, not saying that I'm not open to new experiences and doing new things. It's just more so, I think I have more definitive lines of like, yeah, that I'm trying to think of an example, but I think even though I still like festivals and all that, I don't know if I could do that, or like unless it was something that was like, I'm going with a big group of friends, we're going to be doing a festival show, right? In my mind, like, I don't know if you ever heard of So Far Sounds?
Yeah.
You have? So Far Sounds?
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've been to one, but I went to one recently.
I've never been to one, no. But I definitely have heard of it. Yeah.
So I went to one and I was like, this is all me, man. Like, if I could only go to these kind of concerts versus, festival concerts, I'd be happy. But yeah, so stuff like that. It's just, things are becoming, and I think that's what happens the older you get. And that's why I think a lot of older folks, you might think they're, a lot of people might be like, oh, they're closed-minded, or they're not, fun. And I'm like, no, they just know what they like, and I'm cool with that, because I think I'm getting to that point too. But yeah, so
yeah, it's finding the older folks that somewhat fall in the same categories that you like, right? And you realize that they've got like the history to back it up, and you're kind of like, well, dang, that's impressive. Like, wow. My only event where that was like definitely the case, I won tickets to Gordon Lightfoot.
Okay.
Yeah. It was part of Eugene Weekly up here in Oregon, and they're like, comment on blah blah blah, and we'll get you tickets. And I thought, oh, I'll do this. I'll get tickets for like me and my dad to go, because I knew growing up, my dad had like a couple of his CDs. Mm-hmm. I thought, yeah, that could be like a bucket list item. You want to see Gordon Lightfoot, like whatever. And so I get him, and my dad's like, yeah, I'm gonna be gone. Like, I'm not, like, I can't go to this concert. So it was me and my girlfriend at the time, so my wife, and we go to this Gordon Lightfoot concert. And of course, everybody, right, the average age, I mean, you're talking like late 50s, 60s, 70 years old. And there's me and my wife in our 20s, like just sitting there. And I like Gordon Lightfoot. I like listening to it. I like seeing, but man, he was like in between sets, he's talking about different tours that he did and like what was going on, like how these songs came to be. And then you realize like the dude I think he's either almost 80 or he is 80.
Damn.
And he's touring like that. And I'm just like, this Canadian is nuts. Like he's just going, he's touring like crazy. He was a 70s, early 80s folks music like icon. And you kind of gain that appreciation just by sitting there. It's like, yeah, this guy's storied. Like this guy has a lot in his book, right? Like that book of life. Yeah, they've got a lot. And you just kind of have to sit in awe about some of those things. And who knows? I bet you anything next week he's going to say something really horrid in the news, and I'm going to be like, "Yeah, I don't like Gordon Lightfoot." I mean, you know. But as of now, yeah, that crazy good musician dude who's like, "How are you still touring at this age?" Like, wow, it's amazing. You know.
Got you.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, back to, you know, how would you rate yourself?
Yeah.
Do you think, have you ever had that conversation with your parents, and do you feel like they might have made these realizations themselves?
I don't think they made the realizations themselves, but
Gotcha.
I don't even think that they like, I don't want to say that they don't believe what I say. I think they're more like, yeah, that was your perspective.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, I'm sorry you felt that way. And I'm like, well, that's what kind of matters. You know, but at the same time, I think they're, like I said, I think that I do see it from their point of view of like, we have this child, they're doing things kind of the way that we want them done, but not really. And so we need to get this back on track. Like, what is going on here? And it's not because they're controlling. It's not because they're like just worried about outside perspectives and, you know, like your reputation is everything. No, I think they genuinely were like, I love this child, and I know that it's going to be hard for them if they don't do some of these things. Like, and I don't want to be the one sitting there basically just going, yeah, it's rough, isn't it? Like, you, as a parent, I think you don't like being the person that said, I told you so, right?
I got you.
You want to be the person that said, hey, remember, I warned you about that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you, and so I'm glad you avoided that disaster, right?
For sure.
But yeah, being the parent that's like, yeah, I told you so. Yeah, it's not really doing your job, just saying it and letting it go by. You have to be able to say, like, I help them take the right action. I help them try. But at the same time, you kind of have to leave your hands off the reins, right? So it's like, you can tell them all you want, but if they make that mistake, you just need to be the good parent that sits at the end and just goes, yeah, I'll help you lick your wounds and you'll go back to do whatever. Because saying I told you so, it doesn't do anything. It's like,
it's rough, man. It's rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a heads up, man. We have about 8 or so minutes left in the pod.
Yeah.
You know, this was great, and I hope you just enjoy your time speaking to me. We just, you know, talk about we shoot the shit, right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
Any questions?
We play conversational jazz.
Oh shoot, my lights turned off. Let me just turn this back on real quick.
Oh, do it.
I gotta figure that out. That's been happening, and I would hate for that to happen in, like, you know, crazier scenario.
Yeah.
But I've been trying this new thing called 34 Answers. So if you could help me out, maybe shoot me a question that I can answer. I could put it on that thing. Any questions for me?
So, what do you think altered the course of your life the most? In a good way or a bad way, either way. Yeah.
So many, right?
Right? You do. You start thinking of all these different things, and it's.
I have to kind of be aware of, like, where I think my life was headed and how that was changed, right?
Yeah.
I want to say, well, let me give you one I don't know if when applying for colleges, there's like these prompts, right? They tell you what's been the biggest thing in your life, or like what's your greatest accomplishment or something like that. I think there's a similar question to this a long time ago, right? And I hate to bring it up because I doubt the person's going to listen to this, but there was like a really big crush I had, like, you know, 6th grade, whatever. And she rejected me at the time, and for some reason I took it so hard, and I was like, my world is over and all these things, man. And at that time I was like, you know, a carefree kid or whatever. I think it was also the same year my grandfather passed away, which I wasn't close with him. So when we went to the funeral, I had fallen asleep, and I was hella like thinking about like, I must be a terrible person for falling asleep at my grandfather's funeral. And like, you know, trying to make these excuses at how bad of a person I was. And it was almost super like affirmed when that girl rejected me. So I was like, I fell into this like very, I don't know what was called. A lot of self-pity and self-loathing came up from that, you know, because that was the only thing I could think about. So I don't know, I think a little bit of part of it was that was a life-altering moment, because I spent the next 6 years in self-pity mode and self-loathing mode. I wasn't really looking at the opportunities and chances. Like, I was fine in front of people, but I held that for so long. And I'm not saying it was her fault or, you know, my grandfather's funeral fault. I feel like anything could have triggered that, and maybe I was just like ready to be in that mode because teenage angst, right? I was like around that time. So yeah, I would say that's one of them. And another one, even bigger, and this one I've thought about a lot, unfortunately. But in high school, one of my teachers, my pre-calc teacher, junior year, his dad passed away. He was from Algeria, I believe. So he was gone, and he was gone for like 7 months out of the 9 months we're in school. And I lost so much foundation from that, just because up to that point I had been pretty good with like schoolwork, and I was still pretty good, except math. And like, math for me at the time was always like, I need to learn what happens in class so I can just practice with the homework and just keep doing it until it sticks in my head. But for pre-calc, he wasn't there to teach us. We had a sub for the 7 months that let us just play Monopoly all the time. Which, you know, no bashing the sub either. Like, that was his job, was just to be there. So yeah, that one super altered my life, because then when senior year came, I wasn't in calculus, and like my drive in for math was just pretty much gone, because I had missed like such a building block pretty much. And I mean, I got A's in that just because there was a sub who was like, oh, respectful kid, sure, A.
He shows up, he doesn't disrupt anything, he's great. Exactly.
And I remember I was part of this like academic program in the summer too. So between junior and senior year, there was this point where like they were, oh, you took pre-calc in your junior year, you must be good enough for this math class. And I was not. I remember the teacher was like, are you getting this? Like, are you picking up like where you had left off and all this stuff? And I told him like, this is my situation. And he was like, oh, I see. But he couldn't help me in the 6 weeks in the summer to like get back to where I was supposed to be at. So anyways, I think that altered my life a lot, because if I hadn't, maybe I would have still loved math, and I still would have been like really into calculus and everything that comes after that. But yeah, so after that it was just like, well, I remember senior year they were like, do you want to take calculus, or do you want, what do you want to do? Because my grades were so good, they were like, choose a class. I'm like, let me go back to geometry, because I still understand that, and maybe I could just be a TA or something, which they let me. And that was the end of my like math career, I would say. But yeah, so
see,
those two things.
You had a pretty okay math career, man. You may feel like you fell short, but I tell you what, that's better than mine, man. Oh my God. Yeah. Here's a fun fact. So I went to 3 different community colleges before I got to the University of Oregon. And at all 3 of those institutions, I took college algebra. And I took the class college algebra a total of 6 times. I did not pass it a single time.
Gotcha,
not
dog.
a single time did I pass it. And I'm not kidding. It was like the 3rd or 4th time where I didn't make it. I was like at a D-, and they're like, Devin, this isn't passing. Like, you're going to have to like retake you're trying to get a transfer degree. This is like the easiest thing we've got. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And they're like, I just noticed looking at like high school transcripts and stuff, like you were in some honors classes. Like, what's going on here? And I tried telling them, I'm like, I don't know, man. I can't get passion for it. I just can't. Like, it's out, it's gone. And so I do the homework. I go through everything. I feel like I know it. And I kid you not, you give me that test and I feel like you're asking me trick questions. Like, that's what it feels like. It feels like I don't know anything. Like, what happened? And I'm like, so I feel like I'm just going through the motions and I'm not passionate about it. And so it's just gone. It's out of my mind. And I just remembered that they said something to the extent of like, well, math is like a universal language. And I remember them thinking, like, by looking at their face and everything, that they thought that was like this awe-inspiring thing. Like, this kid's gonna walk out of here and say, "Oh, Captain, my Captain!" Like, he's gonna be like
all about
so
it.
Ready. Yeah, he's gonna be all about this math stuff. And I just remember thinking in my head, like, I need the like Neil deGrasse Tyson of college algebra. Like, I need somebody to drop knowledge bombs of like how this is going to impact my life. And I'm not kidding. College algebra. I have never done anything. Just to throw this out there, won't give my specific title, but I work for the federal government. Never have I had to use college algebra. It hasn't happened. It has not happened. Not a single time. And then it was like the 5th or 6th teacher. They said, so to get into community college, you had to pass a certain amount of like math courses. What courses were those? And so I told them, I'm like, yeah, I took like Algebra 1. I took, chemistry. I took geometry. They're like, did you do stats? I'm like, no, I didn't do stats. I was in physics. And they're like, what do you mean you were in physics? I'm like, yeah, I passed that class and I don't know how. Like, I don't know how that happened. And they're like, okay. And then what? And I was like, oh, and I took Algebra 2. And they're like, usually if you pass Algebra 2, you don't have to take college algebra. Like, why are you taking college algebra if you passed Algebra 2? And I was like, I don't know. Like, and then I realized in the back of my head, I was like, that was the class that halfway through I transferred to intermediate algebra. Like, I never finished Algebra 2. And so it was like them reminding me, like, yeah, no, you abandoned ship. Like, you knew you weren't going to pass this and you abandoned ship. Like, you were out of there. And I was like, oh yeah. Like, it was even back then, like, I was out. And I honestly look back at it and I'm like, yeah, passion is a big thing. If you lose any type of drive or passion in a particular subject, I think as like a parent or maybe another teacher, you gotta be able, like, if some kid says, I hate science, you gotta be able to be like, I can understand that. I understand your qualms with it. But can I tell you how like crazy some of these things in science is, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can tell you what you can use this for and it's going to be amazing. And so same thing with like math. It's like, you realize most coding, most anything. Now we've got AI, right? We got ChatGPT and all this stuff going on. Like, there is a ton of science and mathematics being used. And it's because they're the hardest subjects for a lot of people.
They are, man.
But yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's like you got to have passion for that. Instead, I was like very passionate about, you know, English and the writing and what people were saying, and then definitely more creative stuff, right? So like arts and all that kind of stuff. And yet, yeah, when it comes to like actual jobs and doing stuff, I've always done analytical jobs and all this stuff because that's what gets paid, right? And at the same time, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm a creative, more of a creative person. I kind of like it's like if I'm talking to somebody about taxes, or if I'm talking to somebody about, you know, different, you know, registration codes and all these other things, I can do it and I can go through it and everybody's like, man, you know this stuff like the back of your hand. But at the same time, my brain's like, yeah, I'm just going through the motions, man. Like the stuff that I find to be difficult is kind of like this podcasting stuff, right? Like you have a light go out and you're like, oh, dang, like, what am I doing? And you have to like update that, or your camera's not working, or you're trying to research a subject that you thought was going to be really easy. And it's like insanely difficult. You're not able to find anything. A great example, I was researching tonight, Indonesia, right? I always heard of Indonesia. I know some of their foods. I did not realize that it is 277 million people.
Indonesia?
In Indonesia, out of all those islands, everything, 277 million. That's the US back in like 1980, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, my mind was just like, you're kidding me, right? Like I knew it was a ton of islands. I knew it was all these things, but I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so I thought it was going to be really difficult to research this stuff. Dude, Indonesia, they got 270 million people. Like there is so much stuff about Indonesia, whether it's the culture, the food, famous people, politics, whatever it may be. And that was like the opposite side of that, right? Where I'm kind of like, I'm not really looking forward to this. And I found the passion part of it where I was like, oh, Indonesia's like actually, especially population wise, very similar in size to the US not too long ago. Like that is crazy to me. Like how does a country like that operate today in just a smaller capacity? Because even land area, right? Like they've got all these islands, it's split up. And so it's just, it's like, how do they do that stuff? Like, dang. And so I'm looking at all this stuff and you realize they're like trendsetters for Malaysia and some stuff in the Philippines. And then the Philippines interacts with them. And then Singapore, they transfer stuff over. It's like, oh, dang. And you just realize like there is this whole other world on the other side. And those people are like, they are doing some of the same like mental evaluations that we do, right?
For sure.
Like, what's a dish that my mom or my grandma used to make that I can make right now that's just going to be comforting? That's going to be that thing that hits the spot. And what can I make for a prospective, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend that is going to impress them, but also be, you know, something unique? And it's like, what does an Indonesian think is unique? Right? Because all their food, I find it very unique, right? But I'm just a white American dude that's like, well, I grew up on casserole and hamburgers, like, you know? And so it's like, they might look at some casseroles and be like, that's crazy. That's unique. I'll make tater tot casserole. Like, what is a tater tot? And it's like, oh, it's from Orida. Like, you know, blah, 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 and you start talking about it. And so that is crazy. It's just like, this world it's interactive. It's crazy. And as long as you can find passion in those things, follow that passion line, whatever it is. Just make sure it's not directed in like hatred and that kind of thing, right? Anger. Yeah, it's got to be passion and enlightenment, right? In a way. But yeah, That's those things. But yeah,
Sure,
understood
man.
with the 34 answers, man. Yeah.
I know. I appreciate you
Those would
asking.
change it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm sure it's gonna come up. And yeah, for the folks out there, if you haven't seen the other social page, it is 34 answers. I don't know how I'm gonna do it yet, man, to be honest, because I don't really like, you know, setting up you know, selfie stuff, or basically it's gonna be you I'm gonna cut this little video of you asking me that question just so it could be both of us on the screen at the same time.
There you go. Yeah,
man.
Yeah. I'm getting over that as well, man. I'm trying to be more like just face forward, like present in what's going on, because people like that. I don't personally, but people like that. And it's kind of like, is that what the social media stuff is? Like, you guys really want to see me?
Yeah.
Just me. Like, I don't know, man. And so I've been like messing with AI videos, and they do different things. And, you know, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, I find it super cool. But at the same time, like, somebody else is just like, where's the food? What is this? Like, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh no. Like, here we go. Like, yeah.
I think we can touch base in a couple months or so and see how it's working out for us in this new 2023 year. But yeah,
and
man.
Twitter, they're just
we'll see who gets it. Who gets it from Elon? Because I don't think Elon's gonna hold it forever, unless
I don't think he will either. Man. I think he's kind of
He's gonna give someone a chance to fix it.
Fix it. Yeah. Hopefully. Like, oh man. What's crazy is I used to kind of like scoff at people that would say like Twitter is so important. And I used to be like, no, it's not. Like, people post stupid stuff all across that. But at the same time, you have to think of, like I said, the world, right? International community. Yeah. They use Twitter for communications on a lot of stuff that would probably just be swept under the rug. And it's just like when somebody like that comes in and they're like, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to do all this stuff. And it's like, you're basically grabbing some of those communities and just saying like, yeah, this isn't your platform anymore. You're like, oh, well, how am I supposed to get this out there now? Like, it's
true.
Yeah.
True.
It's crazy. And it's one of those things like, I don't know. I'm not a social media manager. I dabble Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that good stuff. But there's like a part of me, I bet there's somebody out there that is not a professor, right? Like they're like somebody who's in the inner workings of like social media stuff. Yeah. I bet they can do an interview and talk about it and be like, I'm going to blow your mind with the stats on this stuff. And they just start going in, and that might fuel people to actually take it fairly seriously. Like, you can't just let anybody run these organizations. Like, you got to watch what you're doing and, that kind of thing. But yeah, otherwise I just sit back and I watch memes and I see everything going on, and some of it is really funny and some of it I don't understand it, and then some of it I'm like, oh yeah, I used to like follow this random account, and now they're just like crazy. So you never know, it's crazy how the world turns,
I know, man. And it'll keep on turning regardless if we stop or not. But man, I want to thank you again for stopping by. We unfortunately reached the end of our podcast this time around. Thank you for coming by. I want to thank your folks too. We're not trying to bash our folks or anything. We just like to talk about them.
I love my folks. My mom, she just retired.
Oh, congratulations. My pops is doing the same
he retired?
thing in March. In March he's gonna do it. So
March.
He's excited. And what else? I wanted to thank, our educators. We're not dissing y'all either. And also we try not to put too much weight on one part of our life or anything, because it does alter our lives, no doubt. But that doesn't mean all these other choices and events in our lives hasn't altered our lives in a good way or bad way. So thank you, Devin. Anyone listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, thank you for your time as well. Remember to reach out, reach forward. As always, much love. and we'll catch you guys next time on 34 Questions. You got anything for
them,
everybody?
Good. Do I got anything? The only thing I can say, listen to Culinary Combo. I do episodes every Monday, Thursday. I've got all sorts of stuff going on. Starting a Patreon now. That's kind of a new thing.
That's new, man. That's new.
Dude, yeah. It's crazy. Right? Yeah, I was gonna say, people can go on as little as like $3. Then I've got an advertising tier for like $20. Because I'm like $20 a month, $240 a year, and you just do an ad, all this stuff. I do a newsletter, all sorts of stuff.
It's a lot of hard work. Please support this guy. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And so it's just one of those things. Enjoy it. Listen to it when you can. I'm not looking for bingers that are just like rattling off a ton of listens and then just gone for weeks on end. But at the same time, if that's the way you go, that's the way you go. I'm not holding you back. Do it.
Got you.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I got. And as always, much love. Love is what the world needs. Always. Yeah.
Can you finish it off with a piece for me?
A piece?
Yeah.
Like just.
Like we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Oh, yeah. And we will catch everybody next time on 34 Questions. Peace.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for that one. And it fades out from there, man.